Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I absolutely love that subtitle. Just like I love the first 3 Crash Bandicoot games, I have many memories playing them on my PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. I even have this memory, my mom probably doesn't even remember this, but my brothers just got Crash Bandicoot 3 like that night and I was so excited to play, but I had already made commitments to go to a friend's birthday party and I was begging my mom, just let me stay home and play Crash 3, and she said, no, you made a commitment, you gotta go to this birthday party. And I was so mad, and so I didn't get to play it until much later in that night when I finally got home. Looking back, obviously she was right, but that just goes to show how much I do enjoy the franchise. I wouldn't call myself an expert by any means, and I haven't played any of the other Crash Bandicoot games. Despite the title of this game, Crash Bandicoot 4, there have been many other Crash Bandicoot games and spin-offs between 3 and 4, but I guess we're just going to forget about all of that. There's even this quick little wink towards the audiences where one of the masks is talking to Crash and he's like, how many times have you beaten this guy? And they hold up 3 fingers and he's like, it feels like a lot more than that. So there's a lot of Crash Bandicoot fan service in here for fans of the Crash Bandicoot series. There's like cart jokes and lots of characters that you have seen in the past as well. So we'll just get right into the plot of it. It's nothing like too complex here, but it fits the bill for a mascot platformer such as this just right. Basically, the bad guys are creating rifts in the timeline and through dimensions, and we're just traveling through all of these different landmarks in different eras. So we'll be like going back to the dinosaurs, and we'll be shooting way forward into the future. And I actually feel like this makes for a pretty good excuse to have a diverse variety of worlds. There's just a nice variety. Like you'll go to this post-apocalyptic world that's very like Mad Max, or you'll go to like a pirates area, or there's like this New Orleans square where it's like in the middle of a parade. It's just a fun variety, and I enjoy platformers that think a little more outside the box. Mario. That's just like, you know how like typical platformers like, okay, this is the ice level, this is the fire level, this is a jungle level. Instead, it's nice when they try to like go out of the boundaries of what you would normally see in a platformer and think a little bit outside the crate. A little bit of Crash Bandicoot humor for you. But it's our job to stop them from creating all these rifts. So Crash and Coco are tasked with obtaining all these magical masks in order to use their combined powers to stop the bad guys. As you progress through the game, you unlock these masks and they have varying functions, and throughout certain parts of the game, it's not like you can use them all the time, but you'll go through sections where each mask has its own ability that is toggled to the right shoulder button. So you'll get one mask that toggles the existence of platforms, and when you press it again, then those will fade out of existence, but other platforms will pop in. There's one that like changes the force of the gravity around, so you're like walking around on the ceiling. There's one that makes it so you're like infinitely spinning. There's one that slows down time. So it's interesting to see how they use these masks in order to implement these platforming puzzles, and it mixes up the gameplay a lot. I actually like the mask functions probably the most out of all the things in this game. But there are a lot of other fun mechanics as well. Like one, you can grind down these rails and you can choose to grind on top of it or hang from the bottom. You can lean left or right. These are some of the more difficult sections, but they are visually actually pretty fun. There's wall running. I don't know why it took us so long to give Crash Bandicoot some wall running, but he can do that now. I actually feel like they didn't use this function that often. I think there's only like 5 or 6 different levels that have wall running on it. I'm surprised that they really held back on utilizing some of these like grind rails and wall running. I just felt like they were able to rein in these mechanics so they're not overused, but it's interesting when you do come across them. Now you can play with or without lives, and I do recommend playing without lives unless you feel like you're a real hardcore player, if you just want to play super traditional, because this game is so difficult. Like, I'm going to toot my own horn here a little bit. I think I'm actually a pretty good platformer. I've played through all of Celeste, and I just like a ton of different platformers like that are notably difficult for a lot of people, and this game just kicks my butt. It is so difficult, and there's like this little counter in the top right corner that shows how many times you died, even if you don't have lives, because there's a certain gem tied to that. We'll get into that in just a second, but near the end, like those last couple levels, it wasn't unusual for me to have like 40 or maybe even 50 deaths in one level. And levels are actually a little longer than you would think from like a Mario game. They're like, it takes maybe like 10 minutes to get through a Crash level compared to like 2 or 3 minutes of Mario, but still, that is a ton of deaths. And part of that makes me feel like maybe you ever get like super frustrated in a video game and you just are banging your head against the wall, and then you just make stupid easy mistakes that you otherwise would bypass easily, but because you're so frustrated and flustered, you make a lot of mistakes. I feel like eventually, especially in these later levels, I get in that zone where I'm just so frustrated that I'm just making these really bad mistakes. Now, they do try to help offset this, and this was in the other Crash Bandicoot games as well, where if you get a certain amount of deaths within this segment between checkpoints, then they will give you Uka Uka, and he's like a little mask. Think of him kind of like a mushroom in Mario, where you are able to take another hit. So they'll give you him, but most of my time, my deaths were caused by falling off of platforms, and Uka Uka isn't going to help with that. You're dead even if you fall off the platform and you have Uka Uka. So I don't know. It can be pretty frustrating for sure, and I wasn't even trying to 100% complete this game, because this game's, it's impossible enough just trying to beat it, but trying to 100% it, just get out of here. I don't think it's even possible, because if you have 100% completed this game, I want to hear from you and your experience and how long it took you to do this. Now, how do you 100% complete this game if you do want to attempt this daunting task? Well, there are a set amount of gems in each level, so you get 3 gems if you got 80% of the Wampa fruit. Think of this kind of like coins in Mario, where if you get 100, you would get a life, but even if you aren't playing with lives, you want to collect as many of these as possible, because if you get 80% of it, you get 3 gems there. You get 1 gem if you get every single crate in the level, and sometimes this can be very difficult. At the end of each level, there will be this little marker saying how many you got, and it wasn't unusual for me to get maybe like only off by 20 crates, 20 or so missing, and I feel like sometimes, even though I think that I have been getting all of the crates so far throughout a level, they like to hide crates sometimes, just a little bit out of view, and this is a fixed camera, so it's not like you can rotate the camera around and really explore the level. They like to play around with that vision, that point of view, in order to hide certain crates. And this brings me to my next gem that I'm not sure if this is every level, but certain levels have hidden gems throughout them, and it helps to explore, but there's not much exploring you can do in a game like this that is more linear, like going down a hallway. And for the final gem, you can get less than 4 deaths. So 3 max deaths in a level, and you'll get a gem there. And by the end of the game, this was near impossible to me. I don't know how anybody would do this. But if you get a set amount of gems in each level, then you will unlock a skin. And you guys know how I feel about skins. I absolutely love them. And each level has its own unique skin to unlock. So that's exciting, and I really do like the skins. Like I said, I only really unlocked maybe like a couple, and I'm not really happy how they went about doing this whole skin system, because the skin is tied to the level. So you need to get X amount of gems in this level in order to unlock the skin. And how I would have preferred they do it is make the gems more like a currency, like, hey, this skin costs 10 gems. And so each level, it wouldn't be uncommon for me to get maybe 2, 3, or 4 gems in each level, just not all of them possible. And so I wish I could store up those gems and purchase the skins through the couple gems that I did get, rather than having to repeat the level to unlock all the gems there. Now, you don't necessarily have to get every single gem in one playthrough. You are able to revisit the level in a mode called inverted mode, and this is basically like a mirror mode. If you ever played like the Mario Kart endgame stuff, it's basically like they flip the track, And visually, this actually looks pretty cool because they add like this black and white aesthetic to the level, and whenever you do an action, this splash of paint will explode around you and color the world around you. So like whenever you destroy a box, colors will go. Whenever you spin, whenever you defeat an enemy. So it's like you're kind of painting this world as you're attacking. Visually, it's really cool, but I actually didn't try this out too many times because I didn't want to replay the level again. Part of why I play these games is I'm excited to see what's around the corner. I'm excited to see the new level design. I don't want to replay these games over and over again, especially if I'm dying over and over on these levels. But this is like a whole new set of gems. So if you just needed like 2 gems and you can't find the hidden gem or you can't get all the crates, you can play this level again in inverted mode and just get 2 gems in that inverted mode if you really want that certain skin. Control-wise, I think Crash has all of his abilities from Crash 3. It's been a couple years since I last played that one, but you start out right off the bat with your double jump, your ground pound. Shoot, I swear in Crash 3 there was like a run. I don't think there's a run in this one, so maybe you don't have the whole kit from Crash Bandicoot 3, but you aren't unlocking abilities throughout the game like you are through Crash Bandicoot 3, unless you count the mass as kind of unlocking different abilities, but it's not like these carry with you anyway. They're more tied to the level segments themselves. But even with that double jump and all of those abilities unlocked, this game is just so difficult, and there are certain checkpoint crates throughout the level, and I feel like some of them are really close to each other, like, I don't think I really needed a checkpoint that close, but hey, I'll take it. And other times through some of these more difficult segments, I feel like the checkpoint boxes are so spread out that if you get through a difficult segment and there's no checkpoint and then you die, you have to start all the way back at that last checkpoint. And this is another part of just like banging your head against the wall, because it's just like it almost gets to the point where you get to like kind of memorize how the track plays out and what is coming up next. And this is actually kind of beneficial because I feel like with this whole fixed camera angle, this isn't anything new to Crash 4. This is throughout the whole Crash series, but sometimes you can't see dangers that are off the point of the camera view. I mean, you can kind of tilt the camera a little bit back and forth, but some of these hazards are just off view until you run into them. So you almost need to know like ahead of time that these hazards are coming up. And this is especially true for the segments where you're like grinding on a rail, or you're riding on the little polar bear. Yes, that's back. Or there's even that whole gimmick about Crash Bandicoot where you're running towards the camera as like a boulder is chasing you. Although the enemies in this game I think are a lot more clever and interesting rather than just a boulder. There's like a giant voodoo ghost trying to chase you, or a Tyrannosaurus Rex, or like this big old alien thing. There's a lot of fun stuff here and a lot of different diversity, but it's just difficult. Like, it's almost like the end of Super Mario 3D World difficult. That last level, it's just, I don't know if man, I don't know how many people are able to even complete this game, not like 100%, but even just to roll the credits on, because it can be very frustrating, even if you don't have limited lives. So if that's not challenging enough for you, there are different modes as well, including the inverted mode. There are flashback tapes, and you need to unlock these by not getting any deaths when you reach certain points in levels. So you'll get these flashback tapes, and it's basically like these extra little side-scrolling challenges. Crash Bandicoot sometimes has these segments where you are only going like left and right, up and down, but there's like no Z-axis. It's not like 3D, so you kind of play it more like a Mario game. And they have these sections throughout each of the levels. There are these bonus level things that you go on these floating platforms, and it's kind of tricky trying to get all of the boxes there, just like a little puzzle thing. But anyway, the whole flashback tapes is just like one big bonus where you have to try and figure out how to get all of the boxes using them as like platforms, and it's very difficult and very puzzling. I can only do a couple of these, and I didn't even get all the boxes in them either. So if you're even looking for more challenges, go for all of those flashback tapes. I don't even know what the reward is if you do all of that. Probably like a skin or something. There's also sections of this game where you're playing as different characters other than Crash and Coco. Crash and Coco, I think, are exactly the same. There might might be some subtle differences between the two, but I think functionality, they are the same. You can play as, I think her name is Tanya. I can't quite remember, but she's like this adult-looking bandicoot. Is she a bandicoot? I'm not sure what kind of marsupial mammal she is, but anyway, she has like a grappling hook and a kick, and she has her own segments. You also get to play as the Dingodile, which he's been around since the Crash Bandicoot 2, if I'm not, he might have been in Crash Bandicoot 1 now that I think about it, but I just think visually he's an interesting animal because he's a mixture between a dingo and a crocodile. So he's like this dingo who walks on his hind legs but with like a crocodile back and tail. I love the Dingodile and his Australian accent. He's a fun character. I always thought that he was a interesting boss, and just the fact that you can play as him in this one is very fun to me. He has like this vacuum where he sucks things up and then can like fire them away, kind of like Luigi's Mansion vacuum, but a little more high velocity than Luigi's vacuum. He also has this little hover where he points his vacuum down at the ground and he can hover around for a while. You can play as Neocortex, the main antagonist in the Crash series, and he has this little blaster that can transform enemies into platforms, and then he has this dash forward. So it mixes up the gameplay. I actually thought that these 3 different characters would be more playable throughout the game, just because of how they were advertised, but really it's just like these small little subsections that you play them as. You probably play as each of them maybe 3 or 4 different times, and the lame thing is it's only about half of a level, and then you just return to one of the levels that you've already played through as Crash or Coco. So it's really only like half the level, and it just shows how they will affect the level. So let me explain. You're playing through a level as Crash, and a wall will mysteriously blow open, and Crash will kind of like look back at the camera, look at you with a question mark, thinking like, what was that all about? And so if you play this sub level as one of these sub characters, you get to see why that wall crumbled up, and then you just resume that level as Crash or Coco. So no matter what, you are going to be replaying at least some of these levels in certain sections. So it's a highly replayable game, and I think that the creators of this game really wanted this game to be replayable, just to kind of pad out the gameplay. They wanted you to replay these levels trying to get all the gems and playing in inverted mode and doing all that stuff. I just feel like this game is the perfect length if you are just trying to clear every level. I think it doesn't tell me on my save file, but I want to say it took me maybe 7 or 8 hours. That was absolutely perfect. It didn't leave me burnt out at all, even though those last levels were frustratingly difficult. I just felt like, yeah, okay, I rolled the credits. I got my fill of Crash Bandicoot for a while, and eventually I'll go back to play the other 3. You know, I just gotta say that the company Toys for Bob makes visually impressive games. I think they did both the Crash Bandicoot remaster and the Spyro Trilogy remaster, and both of those just look wonderful, and this is no exception. Even on the Switch, man, this thing looks pretty good, pretty clean, smooth, but they're able to hold on to that more cartoony visual without it looking bad. You know, this game just fits right in with the trilogy. I guess with 4 games, is it a quadlogy? Did I just make up a word? Or would you just call it a saga? The Crash Bandicoot saga? I don't know. It just fits right in. It plays like the other 3. It looks like the other 3, the remaster version anyway. It just fits right in with the other Crash games, and it's pretty much like exactly what I would imagine for a good sequel to Crash Bandicoot 3. Obviously, it has its problems. It's not a perfect game, at least in my mind. I think I will give this game a 4 out of 5. Depending on how good you are at 3D platformers, you might feel differently, whether it's worse or better. But yeah, seriously, if you 100% completed this game, I want to hear from you. So let me know if you have any questions or comments about Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!